2 people were killed and at least 6 others were injured during a Halloween celebration in downtown Orlando when a teenager opened fire on the crowd. An estimated 50,000 to 100,000 people were partaking in the festivities when the incident occurred. Surveillance footage appears to show Jalen Dwayne Edgar shooting a handgun as terrified civilians run for cover. Moments later, a quick-thinking police officer sprang into action and knocked Edgar's gun out of his hand before tackling him to the ground. 2 mortally wounded men aged 19 and 25 died at the scene, while the others, ranging in age from 19 to 39 years old, were taken to the hospital in stable condition. In addition to those who were injured by the gunfire, a woman was trampled by the dispersing crowd. While a motive is yet to be revealed, Orlando Police Chief Eric Smith alluded to the possibility that Edgar began shooting after spotting someone he had a beef with. He's currently refusing to speak with investigators and is facing 2 first-degree murder charges, although it's unclear whether he'll be prosecuted as an adult. Number 14. Darren Christopher Abbey. In what initially appeared to be the gruesome aftermath of a bear attack, 35-year-old Dustin Mitchell Kajerson was found dead at his campsite near Big Sky, Montana. His girlfriend assumed a wild animal had killed him based on the horrifying condition of his remains, but investigators found no evidence of any bears in the area. An autopsy revealed that Kajerson had been bludgeoned with wood, stabbed with a screwdriver, and hacked with an axe. DNA evidence on a beer can at the campsite turned up as a match to 41-year-old Darren Christopher Abbey, who was in custody on unrelated charges when the test results came in. Abbey confessed to killing Kajerson, claiming he acted in self-defense. The men have no known prior connections, leading law enforcement to believe that the murder was random and unprovoked. Evidence also showed that Abbey went to great lengths to clean the crime scene and even attempted to make it look like a bear killed Kajerson, making his self-defense claim seem questionable. He remains in custody, with bail set at $1.5 million. Number 13. Luis Mendoza and Bird Charlesworth. Denver Broncos wide receiver Josh Reynolds was shot while leaving the legendary Shotgun Willie's Gentlemen's Club in Glendale, Colorado during the early morning hours. The 29-year-old NFL star and 2 friends noticed that several cars were following their SUV as they drove away from the establishment. Moments later, bullets began to fly, striking Reynolds in the head and arm. One of the vehicle's other occupants was shot in the back, while the 3rd victim was injured by broken glass. The victims, who all survived, reportedly told police that they had experienced no issues with other clubgoers. Suspects Bird Charlesworth and Luis Mendoza are each facing 6 counts of attempted murder, 6 counts of first-degree assault, and 3 counts of illegal discharge of a firearm. Charlesworth told police that he had been enlisted to track the victims by someone who'd had a previous conflict with them. He denied being the actual shooter and is currently free on $100,000 bail, while Mendoza remains jailed with bail set at $300,000. Number 12. Flash floods in Spain. More than 200 people perished in Spain's eastern Valencia region amid heavy downpours and unprecedented flash flooding. Unaware that the storms had caused the riverbanks to overflow, civilians were going about their daily lives when they got caught in the deluge of floodwater, which wiped away everything in its path. By the time people received emergency weather warnings on their cell phones warning them to stay at home, they were already out and in the flood's path. Cars and debris were washed away by the torrent, stranding drivers and leaving streets and homes covered in thick layers of mud. Vehicles were overturned and washed into piles, and many people drowned. The flooding was caused by a storm system which passed over the region and dumped rain. In the most hard-hit area, it rained more in 8 hours than in the 20 preceding months. Efforts to rescue, recover, and rebuild are ongoing, with many criticizing the government's response to the disaster and saying they feel abandoned by the country's leadership. Number 11. Minely Zoe Rodriguez Ramirez. 25-year-old TikToker Minely Zoe Rodriguez Ramirez was reported missing by her family after she was last seen at a Walmart in Cornelius, Georgia, where she planned to meet an acquaintance to exchange a photo. Her fiancé, Julio Tavor, didn't understand the last text message he received from the young woman, which stated, "I am waiting for the brother to pick him up." Tavor told local news outlet Now Habasham News that the message didn't make sense, adding, "She didn't talk like that." Rodriguez Ramirez's car was found abandoned 5 miles from the Walmart, along with her wallet and one of her shoes. A week after she vanished, her murdered remains were found near the store. Investigators connected the crime to 24-year-old Angel de Jesus Rivera Sanchez, who is currently in custody on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. It's unclear whether he was the person Rodriguez Ramirez intended to meet at Walmart, and authorities have yet to announce a cause of death or motive for the crime. Number 10. Helmut Lochner. An elderly Florida woman was watching TV at home in Ocala, Florida, when her 93-year-old husband, Helmut Lochner, snuck up behind her and tried strangling her to death with a rope. She managed to escape and ran to the couple's patio before dialing 911. Lochner reportedly confessed to the attempted murder, telling deputies that he was dying and didn't want to leave his wife of 60 years alone. His wife revealed that this was the second time Lochner had tried to kill her over a 2-week period. The first time he attempted to smother his wife with a pillow, and she didn't report the incident because she trusted that he wouldn't try to hurt her again. It's unclear whether Lochner believes himself to be dying of old age or if he's suffering a terminal illness. He's facing 2 attempted first-degree premeditated murder charges and is currently being held without bond at the Marion County Jail. It's an unusual case even for Florida, with Sheriff's spokesperson Zach Moore saying it's the first time he's encountered a situation of its kind in more than 5 years on the job. Number 9. Danielle Dauphinais. A New Hampshire mother was sentenced to heavy prison time after pleading guilty to the death of her son, who vanished without explanation 3 years earlier. Investigators realized Elijah Lewis was missing after his parents, Danielle Dauphinais and Joseph Stapf, gave up their drug-addicted newborn to state care. Evidence at the couple's home indicated that Lewis was no longer living there and had met with foul play. His remains were found buried on parkland in Massachusetts about a month later. An autopsy determined that he had been abused, neglected, and overdosed with drugs, leading to charges against both Dauphinais and Stapf. While the evidence showed that both parents participated in the abuse, Stapf received lighter consequences in the form of a 22 to 45-year prison sentence for manslaughter. Dauphinais pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and witness tampering and was sentenced to 53 years to life in prison. Number 8. Monica Mosley. While responding to reports of someone kicking in the front door of a Bridgeton, New Jersey home, police found 51-year-old Monica Mosley dead from multiple gunshot wounds. The murder came as a complete shock to those who knew the victim, who worked as a detective sergeant for the Cumberland County Prosecutor's Office. 29-year-old Nyshawn Mutcherson, 31-year-old Jared Brown, and 32-year-old Richard B. Hawkins Willis are all facing murder and burglary charges, while 38-year-old Cynthia E. Pimentel is accused of hindering the investigation by hiding a car and destroying evidence. Shortly after the murder, Mutcherson went to the hospital with a gunshot wound to the chest. He claimed he was wounded in a separate shooting, but prosecutors believe Mosley shot him while defending herself against the intruders. It's unclear whether the home invasion was random or if Mosley was targeted due to her job or for some other reason. All 4 suspects are currently in jail with a bond hearing scheduled for the second week of November. Number 7. Clea Abston. The killer of a billionaire heiress who was murdered during a jog 2 years ago has unexpectedly owned up to his crime. 40-year-old Clea Abston pleaded guilty to bludgeoning and shooting 34-year-old schoolteacher Eliza Fletcher just days before he was scheduled to go to trial in a Memphis, Tennessee courtroom. Fletcher vanished after leaving her home for her daily early morning run, initially sparking suspicions that someone had kidnapped her and was holding her for ransom due to her family's wealth. Her slain corpse was found several days later in a wooded area outside the city. She had been shot in the back of the head execution style and had suffered blunt force trauma injuries. By then, Abston had already been identified as the suspected killer and was in custody. He was linked to the crime through DNA and surveillance footage, which showed him meticulously cleaning his SUV. Following his guilty plea, the judge immediately sentenced him to life in prison without the chance of parole. Number 6. Michael Allan Stowers. 35-year-old expectant mother Tamara Alexis Stowers was found shot to death in the bedroom of her St. Paul, Minnesota apartment after her estranged husband, a convicted murderer, was granted a court-approved visit to go see her. Stowers was 2 months pregnant at the time of her death. Her killer, 36-year-old Michael Allan Stowers, had been paroled to a halfway house 7 months earlier after serving time for a 2008 murder. He was on work release and had been granted a pass to visit Stowers even though they were in the process of divorcing. After killing the victim, the suspect shot a man in a femur and stole his car. Stowers then called the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office and confessed to the murder, but failed to turn himself in as promised. He's been charged with 2 counts each of second-degree murder, carjacking, and assault with a dangerous weapon, but remains on the run amid an ongoing manhunt. Number 5. Nicholas Wayne Hamlet. A nationwide manhunt is on for a Tennessee parolee who stands accused of murdering a hiker in Hamilton County. According to authorities, 45-year-old Nicholas Wayne Hamlet called 911 posing as a man named Brandon Andrade, claiming a bear had chased him off a cliff. Upon arriving at the scene, police found a corpse at the bottom of a cliff with Andrade's ID lying nearby, but the body does not belong to Andrade and remains unidentified, leading investigators to believe that Hamlet stole Andrade's identity and then tried to stage his own death. While being questioned about the 911 call, he gave police a different alias. He fled town before law enforcement figured out his real name, and he remains on the run while multiple agencies work to track him down. Hamlet has ties all over the country, including in Alabama, Tennessee, Montana, Kentucky, Florida, and Alaska. His alleged reason for attempting to stage his death remains unclear, and anyone who sees him is advised to immediately dial 911 and to not approach him. Number 4. Adrien Cosby. A convicted killer lunged at his victim's family in a Florida courtroom after being found guilty of murdering a teen girl over a pair of Yeezy sneakers. The dramatic scene unfolded 4 years after 23-year-old Adrien Cosby shot an 18-year-old Miami-Dade high school senior named Andrea Camps Laseo. The victim's father, Anthony Camps, was delivering a powerful victim impact statement directed at his daughter's killer, calling Cosby a monster and an animal who belongs in prison for life. Seated just feet away, Cosby stood up and began hurling profanities at Camps. Court officers intervened as he tried advancing toward Camps and led him out of the courtroom as he continued to spew expletives. At the same time, several of Camps Laseo's relatives had to be restrained and were also removed from the courtroom. 20 minutes later, Cosby was brought back into the courtroom and sentenced to 2 life terms without parole, along with a concurrent 25-year sentence for attempted robbery. Number 3. Worcester Rancy. 23-year-old U.S. Army Sergeant Sarah Roque was reported missing after she failed to report for duty at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. 3 days into a massive search of the base, her murdered body was found in a dumpster near barracks for single soldiers. Originally from Ligonia, Indiana, Roque had received several medals and ribbons during her 4-year military career. Investigators traced her homicide to fellow soldier specialist Worcester Rancy, a 21-year-old combat engineer who joined the Army 2 years prior to the murder. Rancy is currently in pre-trial confinement on murder and obstruction charges. The circumstances leading up to the crime and the cause of Roque's death have yet to be revealed. Number 2. Kean Means. A single mother and her 2 children are dead after plunging over Niagara Falls in plain view of tourists on what was otherwise an ordinary Monday evening. 33-year-old Kean Means climbed over a guardrail with her son, Roman Rossman, and her daughter, Mecca Means, before taking what was later described by witnesses as a seemingly deliberate 200-foot leap of faith. In the months leading up to the unspeakable tragedy, Kean had expressed sadness over her breakup with Mecca's father. She blamed herself in one post, saying she acted moody during her pregnancy. While the case remains under investigation, it appears as though Kean's despair eventually became too much for her to handle, causing her to make a regrettable decision that can't be taken back. Number 1. Tekashi 6ix9ine. Brooklyn-born rapper Daniel Hernandez, better known as Tekashi 6ix9ine, is back behind bars on a slew of alleged federal probation violations. The decision to throw him in jail came after he showed up an hour late to a scheduled court hearing, infuriating the judge. Hernandez was serving 5 years of probation for racketeering, gun and drug trafficking charges following his release from prison in 2020. He was just 6 months away from completing his supervision when he tested positive for methamphetamine twice in 2 weeks and failed to show for a third drug test. The rapper also traveled to Las Vegas without permission and has been in trouble with the law numerous times over the last 4 years, including a recent arrest in Florida for driving 136 miles per hour in a 65 mile per hour zone. He's also been accused of hitting his girlfriend, Yalin Le Mas Viral, and assaulting 2 record producers in the Dominican Republic. Apparently fed up with his repeat offending, the judge ordered Hernandez to stay in jail until his next hearing in mid-November, when the parties involved in the case will discuss whether or not he should be released.